Hi, good morning and good afternoon, and good early evening to our European attendees. My name is Mike Peterbaugh, and I'll be a co-host for today's webinar, Online Proofing in Your MarTech Stack, presented by Ziflow. Just a few quick housekeeping items before we get started. Today's session is being recorded, and we'll circulate a link later today for all those who have registered and attended. All of our attendee lines are muted, and that's just to cut down on background noise. But please feel free to use the Q&A feature in the webinar interface, and we'll take those questions at the end in the order that they were received. Don't have to wait till the end to enter your questions. Feel free to enter them at any point during the call. If I'm able to see them while we're presenting, I'll see if I can answer them in real time. Otherwise, we'll take them at the end of the call. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, let me introduce our speakers for today. As I mentioned, my name is Mike Peterbaugh, and I'm the CMO here at Ziflow, and I'm joined by our VP of Operations, Will Liu.
Hey, everyone.
All right. A quick background on Ziflow for those of you who aren't familiar with us. We were founded in 2016 by the original founders of Proof HQ. So for those of you who are familiar with the online proofing market, you know that Proof HQ was the pioneers of online proofing. We have hundreds of customers worldwide, and we're really singularly focused on online proofing and helping agencies and brands solve the most pressing review and approval challenges via online proofing. And we are, like I said before, very focused on online proofing and delivering integrations with your existing and planned MarTech stack. Okay, let's get into today's content, online proofing and your MarTech stack. Online proofing has been called the quickest win in MarTech. That's both kind of on its own as a deployment, but also as far as integrating with your existing MarTech stack. And I think that's because it can positively impact the overall creative production process from the first project. I think it's the classic story of immediate ROI. It allows you to deliver projects faster with less management overhead. So let's start with the why. Why would you want to integrate online proofing with your existing stack? So we're going to talk about kind of the overarching, let's say the larger why reasons, and then we're going to get into some actual examples of different types of technology integrations and best practices that we've gleaned from basically the last 10 years in this market. So let's start with the why. And that we start with really better visibility. And I think one of the things that we hear about all the time is that outside of the core creative process, there's a need to inform extended team members on the progress of projects. And I think this is one of the best, probably the easiest why statements about why you'd want to integrate online proofing into your extended stack is for better visibility. Will, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think on the visibility side, connecting your online proofing platform with your overall marketing stack, it really creates additional efficiencies and visibilities to further speed up project delivery. A lot of your project delivery time is really spent on management overhead. It's answering status questions, pushing status updates, updating spreadsheets, just making sure that everyone's on the same page. That all adds time to the project and the project delivery. So it's time people aren't working on the project itself, but just keeping everyone up to date on the project. And by integrating the systems or connecting the systems in the stack, you create additional efficiency just by having more visibility, and more time is spent doing the work instead of managing the work.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that's something that we're actually going to cover quite a bit as a recurring theme in today's webinar. So another reason, as we kind of move forward, is why you'd want to integrate online proofing with your MarTech stack is to allow team members to work in systems they're most comfortable with. I think a lot of this maybe started way back in the days of the kind of the consumerization of IT, where different departments actually started acquiring their own technologies. We definitely saw that at the outset of the MarTech market, where the marketing team started to cobble together marketing applications before even having what I would be, consider today a MarTech strategy. And this is really driven by, the comfort level of different teams working with the applications that they like the most. So, by integrating the review and approval process with your MarTech stack, you not only, create that informing of the extended team members that we just discussed. But you also get them into the process, but via the tools they're already using. And I think there's a big value add there in potentially cutting down the context switching between systems for certain types of roles and use cases. Now, you'll always want to always have a core membership of people in your online proofing application. But for different roles and responsibilities, it may be enough to have them interact via the application that they're most comfortable with, either via simple status updates, decision notifications, et cetera, et cetera. Anything to add to that, Will?
Yeah, I think a really important point here to also point out is it creates a source of truth, and it creates a source of truth from the systems that people are the most comfortable using. So if I am heavily focused on my review and approval process, I know what's going on in my project management tool. In my project management tool, I know what's going on in my review and approval system, in my collaboration tool. Now we're no longer arguing of where that source of truth actually lives, because all the systems are communicating with each other and updating each other, and everyone has that visibility, and it really eliminates a lot of what the source of truth is. If someone's used to using one tool, they might feel that that tool should be their source of truth. If someone's using a different tool, they might feel that that tool should be the source of truth. And once you integrate everything into the same MarTech stack, that's when your source of truth really, it doesn't matter which platform you're in or which tool you are most comfortable using, all the information is the same, and you get consistency of product, and you get the ease of use for all of your, you get consistency of product, and you get ease of use for all your users while making sure that they're all on the same page.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think the last kind of big why statement that we wanted to cover today and discuss was the benefit of driving consistency of work product. And I think this is incredibly important in the creative space, is delivering consistent, high quality work, and specifically cutting down on unnecessary version sprawl, or even worse, rework, which is often unrecoverable in both terms of time and dollars. But I think there's also another side to this, which is, maybe the technical aspect of it, that, Will, I know that you have a lot of experience with, which is the automation opportunity. I know that's something that's kind of near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that especially when we talk about consistency of work product and integrating your review and approval with your marketing stack, there are a ton of opportunities for automation, and that's simply to eliminate manual steps within the process. You can integrate with different cloud storage arrays where you're storing the work, and that can initiate your review and approve process. That'll eliminate time, and that'll improve efficiency in getting your projects kicked off faster. You can push out things like real-time project management updates to keep everyone on the same page, or you can trigger off the things like project completion and have it push to the right page or right to the right place once the assets have finally been approved. So I think that there is a ton of automation opportunity between applications, and the core benefit there is it's really saving time and eliminating errors or mistakes. I've heard a number of instances, I've seen a number of instances where the real bottleneck is someone loses track of something. Someone emails them a file and they're the ones responsible for kicking off the proof, but they never saw the email. Or a project's been completed, but the production team was never alerted to let them know that the asset's ready and the asset's been approved and it's ready for production. So this is where that automation opportunity between applications really becomes key. And it really provides not only consistency of work product, but also ensures smoother project deliverability and a faster project completion, because you're eliminating a lot of the manual steps as you move from one application or platform to the other.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I mean, you think about, large multi-step campaigns today, the culmination of getting a campaign approved, usually, immediately disperses people, team members onto new projects. And as Will mentioned, there's a few last mile activities that sometimes just get lost in the shuffle because we're asking marketing teams today to work on more in less time constraints, or with more time constraints, I should say. So it's not actually crazy to think that some simple steps would be missed, and this is something that definitely the automation promise can help with. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we get in now to some examples of integrations, and the benefits of those integrations, as well as best practices around how to set up those integrations. But before we did that, I wanted to take a quick poll. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. Which collaboration, and we'd love to hear from you, is which collaboration tools would you integrate online proofing with today? And you can do multi-select. If your technology of choice is not listed and you want to select other, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A interface to list out a technology that wasn't listed that you'd be most interested in. Seeing Asana, cloud storage, yeah, not surprising, great. Slack, very popular. We're a Jira team here at Ziflow, so that's good to see. Great. Yeah, thank you for participating, everybody. I appreciate that. That's interesting. Yeah. I think we're going to cover, we're going to cover, maybe not by name each of these technologies, but at least by kind of category over the next few slides. So this is interesting. Yeah, definitely cloud storage. Half of you would definitely integrate with cloud storage. That makes perfect sense. And we definitely, we believe in it because we've got some capabilities in that as well here at Ziflow. All right, so let's move on. Let's look at some examples of some of these technology categories, I'd call them, and some of the benefits of integrated online proofing with them. And then we're going to draw on Will's vast experience as well to talk about best practices in each of these areas. So project management, probably a no-brainer. Probably the most common next to, or at least alongside cloud storage, is what we're asked here at Ziflow anyway to integrate with the most often. So extending the creative production process to project management. We're kind of really, I think, supporting some of the statements we made earlier about increasing the visibility. And this is by enriching project data with new comments and replies. It's a great use case for extending, the team size through, team members who might not necessarily be, immediate stakeholders in a creative project. But it also speeds up the project delivery by, using decisions to update project status. It's actually, an area around best practices that we'll talk about in just a second. But also this helps to drive consistency of your, what I would call kind of work operations, marketing work operations, by providing this info in the project management tool, again, for that larger team. So this is, again, kind of going back to our very first point that we made in today's webinar, which is, awareness and visibility. I think project management is probably the first, probably best example. We'll talk about other collaboration tools as well in just a moment, but probably a no-brainer with regards to setting it up into project management. But what are some best practices now when it comes to actually enriching your project management suite? So you can very much turn the fire hose on and quickly either annoy or desensitize your team members. So Will, can you share some best practices of how to set up or integrate online proofing with project management?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an area where there's the integration with online proofing with project management is unique to some people, but also there's some best practices and standardization. I think the most important thing is what is meaningful and what's impactful for the information you share between the two systems. So it's easy to get into the camp of we should integrate everything and everything should be updated in both systems, but then it becomes too much information or it becomes overwhelming. So it's really critical to focus in on what is really impactful and what information you want to share between the two. And is it a one-way synchronization or is it two-way synchronization? Those are a couple of the key questions that I always like to ask when I evaluate integrating a review and approval or online proofing platform with a project management tool. Should it go from the online proofing to the PM tool, the PM tool to online proofing, or should there be some two-way communication? And if so, what are the really critical elements that different teams need to know? One thing that I've really noticed as I've lived on both sides of the creative review and approve process through the years is that review and approval can look like a small project or a big project depending on how you organize and construct in your project plan. So review and approval usually is made up of many small tasks. And does that become an individual task in your project plan? Is that a larger project in itself? And those are really a couple of key questions as you look at your project management tool on how you want to construct the task or the larger projects within your PM tool as it relates to creative review and approval. So is review and approval one task? Is it multiple tasks? Is it a milestone? So those are a couple of the things that we really want to establish in the front of as you look at review and approval, what is it in your overall project plan and what should it complete? Should you have a sign off on every stage, and should that update a task on every stage? Should you have a sign off for every reviewer, and should that update a task for every reviewer? And as you construct your project plan, the thing that I really drive people towards is it depends on how you want to track and report on it after the fact. So once your project is completed, when you look at it, what do you want to be able to report against as it comes to time? While review and approval usually looks like a single task or a couple of steps in the overall project plan, what we've seen is it's usually one of the most time-consuming parts of your overall content creation or your project execution, the time it takes to get approval. So as you look into your analytics and your insights and your tracking, do you want to see in your PM tool how long it took specific individuals, specific groups, or just the overall project? So as we talk through the integration, there really is no one size fits all. The best practice here is to work backwards. As I'm looking at optimizing my project plans, what am I trying to identify? And those are the touch points that we want to connect the two systems for.
That's great. Thanks, Will. Yeah, I think what you said at the very beginning kind of stuck with me is, you really have to decide early on when you're putting your kind of your information map together, what is interesting versus what is important. And I think that's something that also applies to the next category we're going to look at, which is messaging and collaboration. And I think this really kind of falls into the category of adapting to how teams work today. Instant messaging, we'll just go ahead and, call out Slack as probably a perfect example, is, very popular. We do get asked about, instant messaging type of collaboration tools quite a bit. And it's really around supporting the need to create a sense of urgency around projects and actions required. It definitely fills the bill of extended, or I should say awareness and visibility. But there's also kind of this heightened sense of urgency possibility as well. These real-time notifications can surface, the questions that arise in comments or comments that require maybe, side discussions. And they can surface those very quickly for immediate resolution, which is, an incredible benefit to them. And also, I think one of the things that we hear quite a bit is it helps drive extended adoption of your online proofing process. As it is easy to create new channels in an instant messaging application, and new team members are either drafted into those channels or join on their own volition. It may drive extended adoption and interest in the core online proofing application itself, of wanting to actually take part in it as a contributor, as opposed to just kind of someone who is reviewing and maybe just viewing on the side. So definitely has a lot of benefits around, of course, awareness and visibility, as well as extending the process. Will, can you walk us through some best practices of integrating online proofing with like kind of the real-time aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. I think signal to noise is probably the biggest thing for best practice. So you want to make sure that you're providing the right signal to noise ratio as you're working with a messaging or collaboration tool and you're pushing information to that system. You don't want to be so noisy that the team members are turning off or ignoring that information that you're sending them, but you also don't want the signal to get lost in it. So a couple of things to really consider here is what is meaningful information to push between and what updates do you want to provide. Typically, you're not going to want to send every single comment, every single action or activity that happens on the proof to these systems. You're really going to want to send things like new proof, new versions, status updates, decisions. Those are really the relevant information that extended team members want to see so that they know what's going on with the project. But they don't need to know every minute detail that's going on. So the signal to noise ratio is really critical here. You want enough meaningful information to go out, but you also don't want too much information to go out where it just becomes white noise and people start ignoring it. And really the best way to control for that is properly setting up the channels. So knowing where you want to send the information and when you want to send the information to. Does it all go into one channel and people are monitoring that channel and seeing an update? Should we set up a channel for each project and push it to that channel? Identifying how the information is sent and where it's sent to and making sure that the communication is clearly labeled really becomes critical. There really is no standard here. It depends on how your team operates and how your team works. But this is really one of those aspects where figuring it out early in the process becomes key of one channel, multiple channels, specific channels. Those are the things that really keep that information flowing the right way so people aren't tuning it out because it becomes, again, white noise. And really consider this. Who is the information going to? Is this sent internally only? Is it sent externally to clients, vendors, and partners? A lot of people, when they're thinking about integrating with their MarTech stack, they really think about how to use it internally. But is there value in creating external channels that people external or outside of your organization can be a part of? So clients, vendors, partners, would it be meaningful or helpful to them to get these real-time updates? The answer I typically hear is yes. It'd be great to send them the information, but they won't be in the proofing platform all day. They won't know how to check consistently to see where it is. And that's where you get a lot of benefit on the client side or the vendor side or the partner side to be able to push this information into a communication or collaboration platform that you're really using with them. And really, for me, as I think through these integrations, it's about one, keeping everyone on the same page in communication, but it's also about speed. A unique trend that I've really seen throughout the last couple of years is deadlines have condensed down. Projects used to take an average turnaround time of a couple of weeks, then move to a couple of days. And now we see projects where the turnaround time could be less than 24 hours. And that's where communicating with people and the tools that they're already using and comfortable with become critical. So you want to make sure that if they're in Slack all day or if they're in Teams all day, you're communicating with them there, because if you have a project that needs to turn around in 24 hours, waiting for them to log into the system or waiting for them to check their email may be too late already to keep your projects on time.
Great stuff, Will. Great stuff. So, kind of continuing the thread about talking about efficiency and improving, I would say the overall experience, depending, across a wide range of team members. The next area that we're going to talk about is we're kind of putting, I would say, two categories of technology together. One would be cloud storage, and the other one would be, asset management or digital asset management. And I think this is all about, like you said, Will, about streamlining efficiencies and eliminating bottlenecks, both on the intake and on the output side. We talked a little bit earlier about like the end of a project, about how often, we've seen situations where a project's been approved and yet, an approved asset kind of sits languishing in the online proofing system, waiting to be picked up and pushed into production because, it is the last mile and everyone's kind of dispersed and ran on to their next projects, which were still in progress. So I think this is a both from an intake and an outtake or output perspective around cloud storage and asset management. This is one of the areas where the automation opportunity probably rings true the most. But also, I think another huge benefit, Will, which I know you have a lot of experience with, is around this idea of marketing compliance. Being able to demonstrate an audit trail of both where an asset came from, where it was ultimately dispositioned, and then how it may, if possible, if this is part of the workflow, how it came back into the workflow for either reuse or optimization later. So walk us through some best practices around asset management, Will.
Yeah, absolutely. This area is always near and dear to my heart. At the heart of hearts, I'm an automation nerd. So I love connecting systems to save time. Um, and I think the biggest one is consider where your integrations lie, and a two-way connection between the two systems is probably one of the key areas that I always emphasize. So being able to have and I don't really mean from an integration standpoint, but I mean connectivity between the two systems. A really good example to think of here is after I approve an asset, after I approve an asset in my online proofing platform, that asset ideally should push automatically into my production or into my asset management tool. So as an asset's been approved, let's send it automatically to the digital asset management tool. That eliminates the step of production, waiting for that asset because it's sent automatically to them. So we have that automation aspect of improving efficiency because the systems are communicating with each other and sending it all the way through. But with that two-way connectivity, what we want to do is we want to be able to link back quickly from a marketing compliance standpoint. If I've approved an asset and then we need to get audited on that asset, I need to be able to very quickly go back from my approved asset in my digital asset management tool to the audit trail and activity log of how that approval came to the first place. So maintaining that connectivity between your online proofing tool where you made your feedback, you gave your comments, you tracked your decisions, and the finalized asset in your digital asset management tool where we're really controlling the digital rights management, that becomes critical. And it doesn't need to be a live synchronization, but establishing the connection between the two become really critical. And then really just another one is your metadata. Metadata can exist while it's a work in progress. Metadata can exist while it is in your digital asset management tool. But having those share the same metadata, that's when it becomes really powerful. So think through as things are a work in progress or WIP, what type of metadata you want to track and whether that metadata should be pushed into your digital asset management tool. And if you want to keep that, you don't always need to push everything. If you remember from a couple of slides ago, what information is meaningful, what information should we send out, and what should we keep in the system. So you don't need to push all the metadata, but as you're tracking things in the online proofing platform, what should be sent to the digital asset management tool. And another best practice that I really emphasize as we talk about how to speed up project delivery is the intake method. So a lot of times when people think of asset management, they think of final asset creation or final asset storage, but your asset's stored somewhere as you're working on it and it's still a WIP. So before your asset gets pushed into the proofing solution, where does it live? And how can we automate that process of taking your work in progress files once they're ready for review and pushing it into an online proofing platform? You wouldn't believe the amount of times I've had people say, the designer will send it to the project manager or the traffic controller, and then they have to wait a couple days or a week before the proof gets created because traffic didn't see the email because they're slammed or they lost the communication. So by eliminating those steps and having the systems take it from each other, that's where you can really establish a ton of best practices and get additional efficiencies and consistency of work.
That's great. Thank you, Will. So let's talk a little bit now, and now that we talked about, we've covered a few different technology areas for integration with for online proofing. Let's kind of take a look at it from the other perspective of what you should be looking for if online proofing is something that you are planning to add to your stack, but you want to make sure that it is something that can be integrated and leveraged across your stack like we've discussed earlier in the call. So what's most important when evaluating a MarTech stack ready online proofing solution? Purpose-built integrations, I think that kind of goes without saying. I would say definitely kind of a cross-discipline workflow experience. And I think that definitely means all of what we've talked about today. Being able to integrate certain aspects of the online proofing process, the creative review and approval process into your project management, into your your real-time collaboration, especially into your asset management solutions as well. I'd also put what I would consider API excellence very high on the list. And this, what I would consider, or what we consider to be kind of API excellence here at Ziflow is obviously the availability of the API, the documentation, but also something that might get overlooked, but I think is very important, is the development velocity. What new capabilities are being added via the API? And I would say just even like remote programming capabilities for the application. There are always new use cases evolving, one, and two, there's always new applications and new capabilities within those target applications to integrate with that constantly need to be addressed. So I think an organization that does invest heavily in the API is definitely something that should be high on your list of needs. And then most importantly, I think it goes without saying with anything that you want to integrate into your MarTech stack. And this is probably why online proofing has been called one of the quickest wins in MarTech, is if the application is easy to use, is ease of use. This will help drive adoption. It'll help demonstrate ROI, which I think really does contribute to that kind of title of quickest win in MarTech. But yeah, I think ease of use is definitely also very high on the list. Will, is there anything that you'd add to that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would really add to that is, and it falls into ease of use and API excellence, it's speed or time of deployment. So
Mm.
most systems today are going to brag about how they have an open API that you can integrate with third-party tools, but can you very quickly and easily connect the systems, and do they have the infrastructure and support levels in place? So without getting too technical, there's levels to your complexity of your API, how your methods and your parameters are set up. Do they have things like webhooks? And can webhooks cut down a ton of development time because your callbacks can all be handled via the webhook? So I think a really critical point is, one, does the platform have native built integrations that you can leverage? And then two, do they have an infrastructure in place where if I want a more flexible connection or integration, it's already there and something that we can build without writing a ton of custom code because the libraries are thought out and the webhooks are available? And then three, do they have a support system in place as questions arise and as we need help? So I think time to deployment is a really key factor to look for as well. Mike, I think you might be stuck on mute if you're trying to
Oh,
say
I'm
something.
sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah. So uh, thank you, Will. What I was saying was our CEOs actually put together a really great and useful checklist on the broader online proofing use case. So if you'd like to visit ziflow.com/checklist, you can download at the end of the blog post, a nice PDF to help you kind of drive your evaluation. So I want to move into Q&A now. So I'm actually going to go out of presentation mode so I can see the questions. And while I gather those really quickly, I also wanted to, let me just bring this screen up. So if you're interested in learning more about Ziflow, we'd love to invite you to get a demo of Ziflow. We can show you how to deliver creative projects 56% faster than over traditional collaboration tools. Allow you to give and collect precise feedback via a very secure and scalable and always available platform. So if you go to ziflow.com/request-demo, we'd be happy to demonstrate how we could integrate with your MarTech stack. All right, so let's go ahead and look at some of the questions. Will, the first question I think you kind of answered during the course of the call. What considerations do you suggest customers take with regards to including outside team members, which I think we covered a little bit, but also this is an interesting one though, and possibly integrating with their applications?
Yeah, we actually see this a lot, where they want to integrate with their partners or their vendors, especially as you talk about the intake process or the output process. The consideration that I really talk about here is, what do you want to share with them? What type of visibility do you want to have? So some of the integrations we've seen is after a proof's been approved, the final approved asset and just the file gets pushed to a production system for a partner or a vendor to take care of. We've also seen this really on the intake side, where a partner or a vendor, an outside team member will push content into the system to trigger and kick off proofs. And we send back some relevant information to keep them updated, but they don't get access to the proof itself. So the really big consideration is what do you want them to see? What type of visibility do you want what type of visibility do you want to provide them? And you don't always have to give them access to everything. Most of the time, they may not need the full feedback, activity, comments, and they just want to see the statuses and decisions. So so they know when they need to take their next action. So the top tip here for a strategy perspective is really think through your current communication with them, what information you're sharing, and map that to how you want to connect the systems.
Yeah, I think that you actually touched on it a little bit, which actually goes right into our next question, Will, which is, are there ways to leverage cloud storage? And if you recall back to the poll, everyone on the call, cloud storage is one of the more popular responses. Are there ways to leverage cloud storage as a hot folder type approach where only folders are exposed to kick off new creative projects?
Yeah, this is actually a great one. This one's already native in Ziflow, so we actually offered this one today, and it's really one of the most popular areas with Ziflow. What we provide the ability to do is you can connect a folder with a cloud storage array, Google Drive or Dropbox, and that folder is actually connected to the workflow in Ziflow. So to the external party, the hot folder is just something that they go to and upload a file. They drop the file in like they would they drop the file in like they would drop a file into any other folder. But in the background, where the integration becomes really powerful is in talking about Ziflow specifically, we take that proof, we apply a workflow to that proof, and we kick off the entire review and approval process. So to whoever dropped something in the folder, whether that's external to your organization or internal to your team, all they did was upload a file, and automatically in the background, the proof got created, reviewers got attached to it, stages were added in there, email notifications were sent out. That one eliminates a lot of effort because the system is applying all of those things for you. But two, it also ensures consistency of work because you can tie specific workflows to specific folders. So I know it's always got to follow the same route and go to the right people when I need it to.
That's great. We have one last question. This is a great one, Will, is do you have customers using Ziflow both standalone and also integrated with other applications? I think this is a great question because, and I'll just say yes, but Will, I'll let you elaborate. For some of our larger customers, there are, obviously different teams using Ziflow, and different teams have different use cases and workflows and needs. So, it's a resounding yes. I think that's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have people using kind of a mix and combination of the two, where some team members are using Ziflow as a standalone, and some team members are using Ziflow in an integrated experience. It really depends. All it boils down to is what type of information you need and what type of access level that you're looking for. But we definitely see instances where they're using it in a combination of the two. The most typical one would probably be a project management tool in that integration level there. So for the project managers that are living and breathing in the PM tool, they can access their proofs and they can see the statuses from within their PM tool. So rather than needing to log out or leave their PM tool and log into Ziflow to access the proof, they can access it directly from their PM tool. But for the content reviewers that are spending all their time in Ziflow, rather than needing to go into the PM tool and update the project plan, they can update their statuses directly in Ziflow and still take advantage of the richness of the markup and annotation capabilities. So we definitely see cases where people are using it both from an integrated perspective and a standalone perspective within the same organization, just differing on functional role.
Yeah, that's great. All right, well, that concludes the questions. That's going to wrap up today's webinar. I want to thank everyone who attended and hung on with us toward the end. We appreciate it very much. As I mentioned at the top of the call, we'll be sending out a recording of the webinar later today, as well as notification of our next webinar next month. So thank you all for attending. Have a great day.